over this past week, we didn't have a Grand Prix to talk about, but there was quite a bit of silly season news that was happening. Fernando Alonso renewed his contract for Aston Martin, which was another piece falling into place. There were rumors that he could go to Mercedes or Red Bull. He decided to stay with Aston Martin for at least the next 2 seasons, which is kind of what we expected him to do, just to test the waters in that new regulation and see what happened. And so now we've got to ask, what do you think is the next silly season piece that's going to fall into place?
Yeah, I think the next piece that falls into place is going to be Carlos. They've come out and said that Carlos is quote unquote close to announcing a deal. I think the biggest rumor that I've seen right now is with Mercedes, which is kind of an interesting move. Obviously, Carlos is one of the top performers on the grid right now, and probably him and Fernando were the two in my mind that were obviously the hottest commodities in silly season that were known factors to be available. Obviously, there were some rumors about Max Verstappen leaving Red Bull when all the controversy was surrounding the Red Bull team and all that stuff. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But yeah, so I think Carlos will be the next piece to fall. And I have no reason to believe that he wouldn't sign with Mercedes. I mean, I think that's right now probably the best seat that's available on the grid. So if they're willing to give him that seat, I think there'd be no reason why he wouldn't sign there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I think that's probably the most likely piece to fall next.
I agree. I think that's the next piece that will fall as well. We've all seen the rumors of Carlos Sainz getting closer to signing a deal with Mercedes. I've seen some news that there's a hang-up about contract duration. He would like it to be 2 years. Mercedes are kind of looking at a 1+1. I think they want to keep the door open for Kimi Antonelli. But I also saw some news this morning that was Williams are looking elsewhere besides Logan Sargent for 2025. And so I could see a Carlos Sainz going to Mercedes and Kimi Antonelli going to Williams, kind of like a George Russell went to Williams while he was waiting in the Mercedes drivers program. I could see that happening. But it's so crazy, just the idea that this Mercedes seat isn't a top tier seat anymore. If you went back 2 years and said there would be a Mercedes seat completely up for grabs, you would have had 18 different drivers wanting to go to that seat. And now it's like the seat is there and drivers are kind of tentatively approaching it. No one really is super eager to go get that seat. I think you're right. I think that is the best seat still available for Carlos Sainz. I think that's the seat that he wants to go to. I think, you should give him a contract for that seat. You give him a contract for the Kick Sauber seat and he's going to take the Mercedes one every single time. But yeah, I think Mercedes, I think it's still a top seat, even if they have the 4th or 5th fastest car, depending on the weekend. I fully expect them to get it right in 2026. I think that is probably why Carlos wants that 2-year deal to be guaranteed that he will still be at Mercedes in 2026. There's been a lot of talk of Mercedes kind of taking 2025 off and then hitting the ground running in 2026. I think that could be very great for the team, just because they still seem stumped by these regulations. For them to say they've fixed the fundamental problem of their car and then show up to some tracks and be like, we have no idea why our car is so bad in the high-speed corners. It's okay, so you clearly don't understand your car still. So I think Mercedes focusing on 2026 is probably what's best, because let's be honest, they're not winning a Constructors' Championship in 2025 unless something crazy happens. So I think focusing on 2026 is good. I think Carlos Sainz wants to lock himself into the team knowing that that's their strategy. And then being in that car for 2025, he'll still fight for points. He'll still fight for podiums and have the long shot of a win, but at least still a possibility of a win in that seat. And so I think that's the seat he wants. I think the team are coming around to signing him. So I would not be surprised if we saw that news come out soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, one thing that Mercedes has always been so strong in is the engine. And with, such a massive part of the 2026 regulations being surrounding the the engine. I think that Mercedes definitely has a good shot of being, getting those regulations right and hitting the ground running and being successful in 2026. So I think that's a smart move on Carlos's part. If he does sign there, that'll be really, really weird to see Carlos Sainz in kind of the Mercedes gear, because he's always been somebody that kind of been on the other side of things. He started in, the Red Bull Driving Academy, raced at Toro Rosso, then he went to McLaren, which I guess is a Mercedes engine partner. But, it's not a Mercedes team, it's McLaren, their own team in their own right and stuff. But, and then, now he's with Ferrari, so he's been kind of everywhere but Mercedes so far. So it'll be weird to see him in the Mercedes gear if he signs there. So it'll be interesting to see. And it also makes sense to me that Williams is looking other places than Logan Sargent for 2025. It's not at all surprising, and it would not shock me at all if Kimi Antonelli ended up in that seat next year. I know that Toto came out and said that he was confident he could find a seat at Williams for Kimi Antonelli if Kimi was not the one that got the seat Mercedes next year. So it'll be interesting. There's a lot of moving pieces going on here, but excited stuff.